In recent years, there has been an explosion of entrepreneurship programs in universities across the world. Like all universities want to have an entrepreneurship program. It's a draw for undergrad students. However, relatively little is known about the impacts of such initiatives. So this motivated Chuck and I to examine our own case, Stanford University's case. And there were two major initiatives that were established in the mid-1990s. The Center for Entrepreneurial Studies at the Business School, and the Stanford Technology Ventures program at the Engineering School. And what we do is we use the fact that these entrepreneurship programs were implemented at the school level, and primarily students enrolled in those schools participated in the respective programs. So in some sense, using the timing of the introduction of each school's entrepreneurship program as a source of variation in the data.
The previous literature has really thought about this along a couple of different dimensions. So one is skill development, and the other is the social networking. So let me unpack each of those a little bit. In terms of skill development, we can look at the potential impacts on opportunity recognition. And so that's been one stream of literature. We can also look at the potential impacts on the ability to execute. So on the one hand, these entrepreneurship education programs could be helping students to develop their ability to recognize a good opportunity when they see one, or recognize a bad opportunity that they don't want to pursue. On the other hand, there are skills for execution, such as fundraising or sales skills to close a client. So it could be that entrepreneurship education programs are improving these skills for execution. And then I'll just mention briefly on the other side of the literature, this is not a big focus of our paper, but we do think it's important to note the potential mechanisms that could go through social network effects. So this could include both networking while at school, either with other entrepreneurial peers, or often these programs have mentors involved, or VCs come in as judges. So we think it's really important to think through these various mechanisms, especially as other academics and other universities might replicate these results to see how they're similar or different from what we found.
What we find is that the business school program has a negative to zero impact on entrepreneurship rates. So it's not increasing entrepreneurship rate. However, the business school initiative decreased startup failure and increased firm revenue. So entrepreneurship rate decreased, but the performance of startups increased. We didn't find any statistically significant effect of participation in the engineering school program on entrepreneurship rates. But it tended to decrease the time to first startup. So there are some evidence, but also it was a bit statistically weaker. So we want to be more cautious on this statement. But overall, what we find is that university entrepreneurship programs may not necessarily increase entrepreneurship rates, but help students better identify their potential as an entrepreneur and improve startup performance. The main mechanism we believe at work here is that the entrepreneurship training increases people's awareness of their own abilities and their own skill. And if people are overestimating their entrepreneurial ability, they're adjusting that, and they realize, okay, I might not really be the entrepreneurial type. I might be better at other types of jobs or organizational skills.
Most of the results that we focused on were results that were school-wide or university-wide at fairly aggregate level. But you could imagine digging more deeply into specific courses or specific programs. There's also a number of other mechanisms that we didn't explore. We focused a lot on learning about one's own innate skill relative to skill development. We mentioned briefly about the social networking mechanisms, which previous literature has also talked about. But there's also mechanisms related to kind of sharing of the information or the culture of entrepreneurship, some more informal mechanisms that could be influencing students as well. And this is something that I think, for those looking to replicate this study other places or take a step further, it's really important to have some measure of these intervening mechanisms, because, for instance, we've done this study, at Stanford University, and the location here in Silicon Valley. We have to think about, does that place an upper bound or a lower bound on these estimates? And more broadly, we can think about how the results of entrepreneurship education might vary with the institutional context. So more effective interventions might differ with either the university context or with the background of the student population. Yong and I have some other work along those lines. And so we think the results would generalize to other samples of selective admissions, college-educated alumni, but we definitely need more studies, both across different types of programs, different universities, different institutional contexts, to really systematically understand what's the impact of entrepreneurship education.